Living my bucolic life, free healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello everybody, welcome back. I am going to make a new project, obviously, and I think my camera is crooked. Hang on, let me straighten you up there. Maybe that's better. I don't even know. Anyhow, I am going to make an extremely brightly colored dress just because sometimes you just need something bright and cheerful, and that is my mood today. It's going to be this dress here, which is kind of like a variation on a sheath dress with these funky little pleats there, and I am going to do the balloon sleeves. It's interesting because the fabric calls, or on the pattern, it calls for lining fabric, and I just took a quick look, and you're not actually lining the dress, you're just lining the inside of the sleeve so you get a balloon, kind of like a balloon valance kind of thing. So that'll be good. And I'm using a cotton print that has been pre-washed and pre-dried to get shrinking and extra dyes out, and it is this. Very bold and bright, you know, kind of a watercolor look to some of the flowers. I like that. It's going to be good. Now, because it is a sheath dress and I do have wider hips, and I usually try to steer away from straight skirts just because of my hip issues, the way that I'm going to have to cut it out is I'm going to cut out my bust at about a size 18. Okay, and then I'm going to cut out my waist at about a size 16, but then I need a size 20 to be able to get my hips into this thing. So I'm going to be cutting out all over the place. I'll show you how I'm doing that. And I think that is about it. So let me go ahead and turn the camera down and we will get started. Okay, so this front piece here is very interesting. Lots of pleats. There is no real bullseye for a bust, you know, apex. There is a bullseye down here, but that's indicating waist. Hip line should be around here, which you cannot see, right about there, okay? And so I got to do things interesting because my upper body, shoulder width and everything matches a size 16 pretty well, all right? My bust, technically, my sizing is I fit well in a size 16 with a full bust adjustment, but look at this piece here. I don't want to even start having to think about a full bust adjustment on this piece. It's just crazy. Oh, and this is the upper piece, the underneath piece that's going to be on the other side. It's just flat. There is no shaping. There is no darts. There is no gathers. There's no nothing. This is just a flat piece that's going to be underneath. So that'll be interesting to see. But I want my shoulder area up here to stay a size 16. I need this bust area here to balloon out to a size 18. And I would say, judging by this here, the point, if center front is where these two meet and center front is right here, let me move this page down. Okay, so here is center front, here's where they should be crossing. All right, just below that, probably closer to where, a little bit above where these dots are, is probably the bust line, okay? So I want to make sure at this point I'm using size 18, okay? So I'm going to focus on size 16, shoulder, armhole, come out to size 18, bust. So like I said, I'm going to be cutting all over the place, so just bear with me. Once I'm going to get it cut off camera, and then I'll explain how I do it. I think that'll be easier than trying to move around and talk while I'm doing this. But I wanted to ask, and you could comment if you do, I've been having some trouble with my videos appearing a little bit darker, and this morning I climbed up and I installed more ceiling lights above my table. And so I'm hoping that things are brighter now, so let me know if you see any improvement. That would be helpful. Sometimes I can't tell, you know, but anyhow, let me go ahead and get these pieces cut, and then I'll take you one by one through them and explain why I cut it the way I did. Okay, so I've got my pieces cut out, and so just going over in general how I did it is my facing pieces I did in a size 18, because in that general area I'm either doing 16 or 18, and I figure if they're a little bit big it's easier to, you know, manipulate that way, even though I don't think that there's really that much difference in sizes in the facings just by looking at the pattern. But I cut my sleeve. This is my big sleeve. The lining piece I have not cut out yet, but it's a lot smaller. This has pleats. The lining has gathers, you know. But I've cut this out of a size 16 also, because that's the size I have my armholes cut to. Now, for my side front, because the front is kind of like princess seams-ish, the back is a standard back with a dart, okay? But the front has a side piece and then that center front piece on a princess seam in the front. And so what I did is, there's no variety on the bottom, obviously, and there are two different lengths. I cut the shorter one, okay? So I cut there where there's just one line. I did that. Up here, I cut at a size, what did I cut at? This is 16 right here, okay? It's only like 1 millimeter difference between a 16 and an 18, so I wasn't gonna worry about that. Cut 16 at the armhole. Down here at the size, I bump it out to an 18, okay? But then I tapered it back down to 16 at the waist. And then below the waist, I spread it back out to size 20 for my ample hips, okay? And then took it 20 all the rest of the way down. In general, that's how I did it for the back piece also. And there are two back pieces that you cut out. So the center, you know, it's just one line. You don't have any options there. But out here, size 20 up to the hip. And this looks a little angled to me. So as I sew it, if I need to round it or flatten that little curve right there out a bit, I can, you know. But I went from a size 20 down to a 16 at the waist and then back out. On the back, since there's no princess seams, you have to work all that difference in sizing into just one seam line. So on the front, there's two because you have two different pieces. So on the back, there's ½ inch in between each size. On the front, there's only a ¼ inch in between each size. So it's easier to blend on the front pieces because you don't have so much of an extreme curve, you know. But we can make it work, not a big deal. I'm going to be using the center dart here. They have a 16 out here on this side, the 20, 24 on this side, 18 and 20 is in the middle. That's the one I'm going to be making, just so you know. And then, you know, up here, size 16 in the armhole because I cut a size 16 sleeve and 16 at the top. Then the front pieces are odd, and you have to cut a lot of this stuff out one single layer at a time because of the way everything has to lay out. And I had exactly 3 yards, and I did not have very much fabric left over, I can tell you. So when you cut these out, you want to make sure that you have the right sides. Like I have a right side and a wrong side on my fabric here. So like for me, I made sure that I put my pattern pieces right side up, okay? And that when I cut them out, I could tell that if I overlaid them, yes, I would have two different sides, okay? Actually, this is gonna go way up here. It's an odd shaped piece, okay? So I can tell I have two different sides and it's all gonna work out. So this left front, like I said, there's no darts, no nothing. It's just one flat piece here. Again, I did in the center, starting at the bottom here, size 20, coming into 16 at the waist and bumping back out to 18 at the bust-ishness, and then took 18 up to the shoulder, okay? 16 at the shoulder, 16 at the armhole, and then spanning back out to 18 here, and then spanning back in to the waistline at 16, and then popping back out to the hips at size 20, because that's how I am shaped, you know? And that's part of the good thing about being able to make it to fit you, because I cannot fit in ready-made sheath dresses. I'm just not working in their standard size. In order to get a ready-made sheath style dress to fit me, it has to fit my hips, but then my waist is way too big, and usually if I have to buy things to make all that fit, it's sized for a much larger person on top also, and everything. I have gaps in my armholes, and it's just a mess. So I'm really glad. Sewing is a fabulous thing once you can figure out your size proportions. Anyhow, then there's this piece, this wild piece. So same principle, size 16 at my armhole and my shoulder. Size going from 16, I'm spanning out to 18 on my neckline here. Then I'm doing 18 through the first pleat, and after the first pleat I go in towards the size 16, and I do 16 all the way down to the bottom of the last pleat. Then, because I'm getting into the hip level, I just bumped it straight out here to size 20 and came down. Over here, it's size 20 straight up, and because this has that really wild curve, I just kept going straight until I hit the size 16 line here at the waistline, and then moved it back out to 18. So you can see, I am just all over the place, but my hope is that it's gonna fit well. So I need to cut my lining piece out. You don't need to see that. I haven't even figured out what lining fabric I'm going to use yet. So let me go and grab that, and then we'll get started putting it together. Just wanted to show you, I found a piece of fuchsia pink Bimber Rayon in my lining scrap bag. So I am using that. It's very breathable, you know, and it's nice and cool and lovely to put your arm through. So that is what I'm doing, but I wanted to show you the shape of the pattern piece. You can see that this one is a whole lot narrower and everything, but it's still, for size 16, has a 16.5 inch width, which I think will work for me. It's just not going to be big and loose, but the outside part is going to be big and loose, so I think it's going to be okay. Okay, so all cut out. The first thing they're going to want you to do is interface the facing pieces. I will do that when I'm actually getting close to using them. You know, I don't feel like it right now. I want to get into making the pleats on my front right piece. Alrighty, so before I actually get the pattern pinned on, I'm going to get my piece of leather, you know, stick it underneath here. I probably should move this out of the way, just, you know, in case accidents and all that. And punch out my darts. Now down here at the bottom, remember I was cutting out the size 16 line. Up here at the top, I was cutting out the size 18 line. So I'll be doing the size 18 darts here. 16 darts here. I also have a couple circles going on over here. One up here for sleeve placement. One right here, which I believe is where these two overlap and are attached, and then there's another one down here at the hip, I think, where that other underlap place gets attached. So down here where I have size 20 cut out, I'm punching out the circle for 20. Okay, up here where size 18 is cut out, I'm punching out the size 18 circle. And up here at the very top in the sleeve, because I cut the sleeve out at 16, I am punching out the size 16 circle. If you can follow along, that is fabulous, you know, and I'm pretty much just doing that type of method, whatever size I cut out at that point. Those are the circles I'm using. Okay, so now that they are all punched out, I am using my heat erasable pen to reach through my circle and draw it. Now, because my fabric is such a busy pattern, I'm actually making it into a bullseye, because that way it'll be a lot more obvious to see. The other thing I need to do is to mark my notches. And to do those, I do just clip them into the fabric about 1/4 inch, you know. I think that is fine. I'll be doing that up here. And down here at the tips of all of these little pleats, I'm gonna move you over, what I like to do is, again, just make a tiny little notch at the bottom of the leg of each of the little pleats. You know, it's not enough to go, it's only going to go less than halfway up the seam allowance. It's not going to cause any damage, but that really helps me get a very accurate pleat. So let me finish marking all of this. And I actually do need to have these marked from the right side. And my problem is that it's very hard for me to see. But that's okay. I'm just going to do one at a time, and I think that way I can keep track of my little marks. So what they want you to do is they want you to end up with pleats that are kind of like pockets from the top, okay, where the bottom comes up to the top dots. So these bottom dots are going to come up here. So just so I can keep track of them, I can see this dot here, and I have my little clip down there. So I'm going to pinch it. You know, so I have a little crease. Where is my dot? There it is, okay? And I'm bringing this dot at the very tip to the one ahead of it, and this here. Now look, that's sticking out odd. I don't like that. I wonder why that is. Maybe I did not use the right dot. Usually, the little part that sticks out will disappear. So I'm just gonna see what it would take. Okay, I think I just had it folded a little odd, because you want your pleat so that those little triangles are not sticking out, so that they are nice and flush, okay? So what I'm gonna do is pin it straight across here, because I'm going to want to hold that pleat very carefully. I don't think that we're going to be stitching them. We might baste them though. Are they going to have us baste them? Yes, they are. They are going to be having us baste them. And that's probably something that we'll pull out later, because I don't see that these still have stitching on them in their final, you know, version. So I can see where my top dot is there. I'm going to put a little pin going across here so I know where that is, because, you know, my fabric is very busy. And once I get them all in, then I'll come back with the needle and thread and baste it from this point here where the top, you know, most inward dot is, all the way to the edge, and down this way, okay? So I've got them all pinned. I know it's very busy. Maybe you can see it better on this side. So what I'm going to do is just start up here at the top, starting on the outside dot. I'm using just a white thread. It'll be very visible, but it will remind me to pull it out again, you know? And then I'm going to come down the edge and just baste that also, to keep that underneath part, you know, held down in the right direction. Okay, so now that I've got my basting in, you know, so these darts are going to be held in place, what the instructions are telling you to do is run a row of stay stitching down this side over here, which is underneath. This is where the sleeve goes, you know, this is the outside. It'll get sewed onto the side front piece. And they only say to put stay stitching around this curve. I am also going to run it here because this is also cut on a bias and I don't want it to stretch out of shape, and that just looks like something that would have a tendency to do that, you know. So let me go ahead at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, run a row of stay stitching here, run a row from right underneath this armhole. They say to start down here. I'm just going to do it from the armhole all the way down until I am on the straightaway down here below my hip curve. Just changed my mind. When I'm doing this front, when I come down here, I'm just going to pivot at this point and go ahead and put a machine stitch over where all of these darts are to hold it down. I know I have basting there, I'll just feel better and it won't take, what, 2 seconds longer. So the machine I'm going to use today is the one I named Daria, and she is a Singer 15 from 1895. She's a very old girl. But I wanted to use a treadle just because I haven't for a while. And I needed to pick one that I have a zipper foot for because this dress does have a zipper. And I think that she's just about the only treadle I have that I have a zipper foot that I can use on her. So there you go. She's a 15. She uses modern 15 needles, modern 15 bobbins and all that. And so let me go ahead and get her started up. All right, so once I got my stay stitching in, you can see here, I went ahead and serged all the way around. I serge so that I try not to cut off any of my fabric, but you know, get workable corners. If you're new here, I serge before I sew 99% of the time because I want to be able to press my seam allowances open. I want to have the option to adjust seam lines and things like that, but I still want the benefit of my serging to keep my fabric from not fraying after it's been worn and washed and things like that. So I'm just going to set this piece aside for a second. I need to get my left front piece out now here. And you know, it looks similar at this point. Now they're going to ask you again to stay stitch here. And again, I am going to also stay stitch along the front neckline of it, okay? Not a whole lot to mark on this. There's a couple dots here, here, and here. And I'll get those put onto the wrong side because, you know, it'll show up on the wrong side. And clip my notches the same as I showed you before. And yeah, so let me go ahead and get this marked. Stay stitch it here and here. And then serge it all the way around to keep it nice and safe. Now on my right front, I did not serge the very bottom because that's going to be in a hem and it'll be taken care of that way. This one, they're going to have you fold it up like that, so it's also going to kind of be in a hem even though it's going to be a shorter hem, if that makes a difference. Now they're going to want you to turn it under twice. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. So I'm not going to be serging the bottom of this just like that one, just because that's how it's going to be taken care of. Okay, so I've got my little left front piece here. I have serged it, stay stitched it, all of that. And what the instructions call for is a narrow 5/8 inch hem at the bottom. So I am just going to press it up at about 5/8 of an inch. All the way across here, get a nice crease on that, you know, with my steam as you can see, and then come back and just tuck that edge underneath like this. Okay, press it one more time, and then with my machine I'll come back and stitch right across the top edge. Okay, so with that part done, I have it just hanging out on my dress form, pinned on there. I need to get my back pieces. And this pattern does call for an invisible zipper. a 24-inch invisible zipper, so I'm using my purple one just because I don't make a lot of things that I can use a purple zipper on. So, you know, I think that'll be fun. So what I need to do is, before I get started on the zipper, I want to make my darts and mark everything. So once again, getting my little hole punch, and like I said before, I'm going to mark up the center dart here, the size 1821. I think that will be good. I've got dots up here, dots here that have to do with zipper placement and things like that. So let me get everything punched out, written on, clipped, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've got both sides marked. I'm just going to do one at a time. And of course, what I do for this side holds true for the other side also. So hopefully you'll be able to see I have my little dots with little circles around them so I can find them again. And I'm going to stick a pin down one dot and back up. There you go, the second dot. And while I have that pulled through, I'm going to pinch this end down here, and that's going to give me a little crease that I want to keep track of. Stick a pin straight through at the bottom dot. Come back up here, grabbing another pin as I go, and pinch the top one. Okay, so I have that one big crease going across now, and put a pin at that top one. And lock this guy in here. So what I'm going to do, just because it's me, I like to connect my dots, and usually I do this before I pin it, but for some reason I did not this time. So I'm only going to be drawing these on this one side because the other side, you know, I will not see. And this is going to give me the stitching line. So as I'm sewing, I'm going to start. Okay, so here's the thing. Technically, you should start in the middle, come down, and then start in the middle and go up. And if I was using a fabric that was misbehaving, I would do that. This is a very sturdy 100% cotton. It's not going to misbehave on me. So with that, I'm just going to start it at the top and work my way down. That's a good rule of thumb. Start at the top, work your way down, because sometimes fabric gets a little bit, you know, out of sorts as you go. And if you start at the bottom and work your way up, that's all going to come out in the armholes and things, which is a mess to deal with. But if it does that and it comes out down here at the bottom, so things are slightly askew at the bottom hem, like so or something, well, it's a hem. Just trim it and hem it up. So anyhow, I'm going to start at the top, work my way down, do the other side exactly the same, and get those pressed. And then when I press them, we're going to be pressing them towards the center back. So once they're sewn, it's going to be pressed this way. Okay, so I'm over here at my ironing board, and I did not backstitch my darts. I left them loose so I could tie them off now. And the reason is because manually backstitching on my treadle machine, as you can see, is a little bit, it can be inaccurate, I guess is what I want to say. So to me, it's better to have a nicer seam to go ahead and tie off my stitches that way than possibly backstitching, you know, out and causing bulk. So now that I have it like that, I'm just going to press this seam towards the side, towards the center back, This fabric is so light that I did not press it flat first. If this was a thicker fabric, I would have pressed it this way first and then opened it, but yeah, this is going to be fine. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. On this side, ironing it erases all of my little drawings and everything up here. I didn't get the iron close enough to my other marks. Hopefully they'll still be there. So before I can put my zipper in though, I need to go ahead and serge around this piece. Once again, I'm going to leave the bottom part unserged because it will be hemmed. Okay, so with that done, according to the instructions, it's time to sew it together below the notches to the dot and then put in your zipper. However, I do not do that. I put my zipper in first and then I sew it. And the reason I do that is because it's so easy to get things slightly misaligned sewing an invisible zipper in that you will then end up with a little bump right above your stitching, and that's just not beautiful when it's right on your rear, having a little bump in your fabric. So instead, I put my zipper in first and then sew below it so I know that's perfectly matched, okay? So I'm just going to set their instructions aside for a moment and get my tape. I always use, well, always is a big word, but I love to use this tape when I'm putting in a zipper, and it is drying out up here for some reason. It is a double-sided, water-soluble basting tape. So let me get started. We're just going to do one side of the dress at a time first. So let me get myself situated here with my tape and my zipper. Okay, it says that they want the zipper pull 3/8 inch below the seam line. Okay, so if we have a 5/8 inch seam allowance, okay, so if this is my seam allowance here at 5/8 of an inch and they want the zipper pull to be 3/8 of an inch below that, it's exactly an inch from the top. So that's fine, good to know. I'm going to get my zipper, and actually I need to look at this from the right side. So let me go ahead one more time and make that little line where 1 inch is. Right here. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that, okay? So with my invisible zipper, this is my pull, okay? The top of this right here is what I'm gonna line up at that 1 inch mark, okay? Like that. Now, the other thing I need to do is measure the distance when this is zipped together from the center of that zipper to the edge of the tape. And if you can see it, that's 3/8 of an inch, okay? So I want a 5/8 inch seam. We want the center of the invisible zipper to be at the same distance in as our regular seam allowance, which is 5/8. So since this is only 3/8, we need to add a 1/4 inch. So that means from the outside of this zipper tape to the cut edge, I need a 1/4 inch. So just to make 100% sure that I am doing it correctly, I'm going to get my pen and lining up my ruler 1/4 inch in. It's going to be very hard to see. Let me get a piece of chalk here. Let's see if I can do it with my chalk. That might work out a little bit better here. Okay, that's going to work. So I'm just going to draw a line at this 1/4 inch, you know, here and there. It doesn't need to be everywhere, you know, I can skip, just so I have a guideline of where I need to place my zipper. Now I can see from here that if I just do everything as is, the bottom of my zipper is way down here. Okay, now on the fabric though, there was a circle that we had to mark right there. That's where they actually want the end of your zipper to be. And they're going to show you in the instructions to cut off your zipper, you know, and put a thread tack around it. I'm not going to do that, but I am on this side going to make a mark where that zipper needs to end. Okay, that's where my stitching is going to end. So with that marked, let me go ahead and get this 1/4 inch line marked periodically all the way down to that point. Okay, great. Now that is done, the right side of the zipper, which is this side here, is going to, this side of it's going to be going up against the fabric here. So let me unzip it. Okay, now on invisible zippers, you see coils on the wrong side. You don't on the right side, okay? Now, before I actually put my tape on this zipper, I'm going to need to go over and iron it. You want to iron it so that these coils kind of unroll themselves. It's going to make it a lot easier to get a really good stitch close to the coils, okay? So I'm going to unzip it and iron it, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have it ironed now, and what I need to do is put my tape on, but I only want to put my tape from this point here, whoops, here I am, where the stop is, to the place where it needs to end, which is where we put our mark right here. Can you see that? I hope you can. I'm just going to draw a little mark on my zipper at that point, okay? And actually, I drew that on the wrong side. It would be a lot better for me if I drew it on, I drew it on the right side. I need to draw it on the wrong side of my zipper. So let me go ahead and mark that again and put it up here and down here, or thereabouts. If you don't get this exactly, you know, within a millimeter or something, that's not a big deal. All right, so now looking at the right side of my zipper, okay, the side that has the little tab on it, I'm going to get my tape, and starting down here where that mark is, I'm going to put my tape along the outside edge of my zipper all the way up to where the stop is up here at the top, right there, okay? Okay, so now I just have one of my back pieces here. The other one is over there. I don't need it at this point. I'm going to take my zipper and put it right side down, so right sides together, okay, with my little pull on the right side, flip it upside down here so it's right sides together. This side that would make sense for it to be over here, that's the side that I'm going to be attaching. So let me raise you up in here. So what I need to do is pull the paper backing off of my tape up here, which can be tricky. I get a little straight pin in there to get it started. All right, now that I have it started, I'm just going to peel it off the rest of the way down. Okay, so now that it's got the paper backing off, so this side is very sticky, I'm just going to start up here at the top and line up where that stopper is with that 1-inch line that I drew, and line up the edge of the tape with that 1/4-inch line that I drew, and just work my way down, pressing it down very firmly as I go so that my tape will keep my zipper in place. It's nice because you can make the curves and everything, and it lays really well. Get the little stopper out of the way. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to need to do now is put my invisible zipper foot or some kind of narrow foot or something on my little 15 over there so I can stitch it straight down here. So let me go find a foot that'll work on her. It's just a generic low shank invisible zipper foot. It's just got the one little groove through there, open-toed and everything, and that should fit on her. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it on. All right, so I got that side on. I need to get my other back piece now, and I'm going to mark it the same way, putting a 1-inch mark at the top so I know where to start it. You can see right here, 1 inch from the top. Also, I'm going to mark that 1/4 inch in all the way down, and I'm just going to line this up really quick, and I can see that right here should be my stopping point, and yes, that lines up with the little dot right there. Sorry about that. It's hard to remember sometimes to look up at the camera. Anyhow, let me go ahead and make my 1/4 inch guidelines all the way down here, and then I will peel off the backing paper and show you how I stick it on. So I have this here so that the side I already put my zipper on is right side down, and it's just kind of loosely put over the top of my other piece here, okay? That will give me the best position to be able to get everything matched up. So now that I have it laying like this, where I can reach my other side of the zipper over here easily, I'm going to go ahead and peel the backing paper off of this side. So now I'm going to stick it on again with the stopper at my 1-inch mark, lining up the edge of my tape with my mark I drew at the 1/4 inch mark, and I'm just going to continue to press it all the way down. Okay, once I get it on here, I am going to go back to my machine and sew this side. Okay, now since it is glued down with the basting tape and not pins, it is okay, technically and otherwise, to sew from the bottom up. It's equivalent to having it basted, and you're allowed to sew either direction when something is basted. So just giving you that heads up, because sometimes with a zipper foot, that's handy. Oh man, look at this, I have it twisted. All right, that's okay. I just need to slip my little fabric around. All right, now it's untwisted. I don't know why I did that. Anyhow, let me go ahead and get this stitched on, and then we'll worry about everything below the zipper. So just to let you know, this is not my favorite kind of invisible zipper foot. This one actually is. It has the deep grooves on the sides, you know. That one has a little groove, but it's in the middle. I like these on the sides because that way the coils can go through there easily. But we make do. So on this one, the little side pieces of that little plastic part down there, that's what's going to hold the coils of your zipper down flat, and you're going to be stitching right in the center. So once I get past the little stopper there, I'm going to go a couple stitches, you know, do my version of a back stitch there, and pull it off. At this point, I'm back here at my table, and it is time for the moment of truth to see how she zips. There we go. So you can see it looks like a nice seam all the way up. Here's my little pull, 1 inch down, which is perfect. Now, we still have all of this open down below, and it looked like they wanted us to go back up here where we are only stitching from, we'll say, the point where the zipper ends down to that dot. And I have my dot marked here somewhere. It is right here, right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little line so I can see that. All right. So what I'm going to do is close these up. Oops, I need to trim some threads here, don't I? All right, and I'm not worrying terribly that they match down here. They will, it looks like they're exact, but if something happened while you're sewing your invisible zipper and they get skewed a little bit, like I was saying before, it's okay if they're off by like a 1/4 inch or so, that's fine. So up here, I'm gonna raise up the tail end of my zipper, okay, get it out of the way, and I'm gonna pin this together here, and I can see where I stopped sewing. I need to stitch this at 5/8 of an inch from the point that I stopped sewing to the dot, which is right here. Okay, so basically from here to here, I need to stitch this at 5/8 of an inch. If you can't get in right here with a regular foot, you might need to put a little narrow foot or a zipper foot, a regular zipper foot on or something. But usually I can just kind of smush it and pull this out of the way. Just get as close as you can to this point. Okay, and stitch right down to there. And then once you have that stitched, I believe we are pressing these seam allowances open. No, it looks like we are not for some reason. I don't see why we're not, but you know, we'll just let them do whatever they're doing. Okay, I just read ahead all the way down to the finishing part, and they do want you to press it open. You're eventually going to be making a narrow hem there, but I'm going to go ahead and press this whole thing open, and then down below where I stitched, I'm going to be pressing this at that same 5/8 of an inch all the way down. Okay, so this is what my center back looks like now. I know that the fabric is very busy, but this is where my zipper is going down. And there's no bump, but I can kind of feel that this is where my zipper ended. Well, here's where it ends, but this is where my stitching ended, and then it just goes on. So again, this, you know, just my favorite technique. You do you, but this makes sense to me. So what I need to do then is go ahead and go get my 2 center front pieces and match them up here at the shoulders and sew them at 5/8 of an inch on each side. All right, I'm finally going to cut out this interfacing, and of course, this is what I'm using. There you go. My extremely lightweight stuff, because this is just a light cotton dress. I don't need it to be super, super stiff or crisp or anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut my pieces out and get them fused on here, and I will be right back. Okay, so at this point I've got my interfacing fused on my little pieces here. I need to match up and stitch my shoulder seams of these, again at 5/8 of an inch, and press those seam allowances open. All right, so that is stitched, pressed open, and I am going to serge around this outside edge here from the point all the way up, and actually I'm going to turn this corner too. Okay, so I am going to unzip the zipper part way just so I have a little bit of breathing room up here to play with stuff. So let me get one side. Just going to move this back a bit, and what I do to one side I will be doing to the other side. So this goes over here, this one goes here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is match up the shoulder seam and get that pinned into place. Come down here and match up this bottom corner and get it pinned into place. You know what? I am not. I'm just going to start at the top, because remember I'm using so many different sizes. I think that my facing is going to be slightly longer than my actual garment, so we're just going to let the facing look a little bit longer, and then I can trim it up after to even this up down here. Okay, so that's fine. Now out here, let me see how they want us to treat this upward corner. It looks like they want the zipper to stay folded as it is, and I need to trim off. Hang on a sec. Okay, I'm going to trim off this little tail there. Okay, so with the zipper part folded as it should be, I'm just leaving the facing sticking out. Can you even see that? All right, so this is folded, this is flat. Matching that up. And it looks like when I go to stitch it, I'm supposed to, and I think I'm actually going to start at the bottom, which I know defies so many rules, but is what it is. So I'm going to start here, come all the way up, and just fly off the end there. I think that that's going to work. Just making sure I'm going to put one more pin here to keep it flat. And for some reason my facing pieces are a lot wider than my garment, but you know, that's okay. It's just a facing. Facings were meant to be trimmed, so that's all good. Gonna put a couple more little pins here just to hold it in place. I'm gonna stitch it like that and do the other side exactly the same. All right, so I've got my stitching on. You can see I had to redo a couple things right here because I needed to make sure that the tape, the upper tape here that's loose, was pushed over inside here so that from the outside that upper tape would not be visible. And the first time I stitched it, it was visible. So, you know, picked out a few stitches and now it's good. But before I start trimming and clipping everything, I'm going to need to understitch this. So let's look at it on this side here. Got my facing, got my bodice here. I need to fold it so I make sure that the facing is on top of the seam allowances, okay? So from this side, it looks like this, facing over here, seam allowances over here. And I'm gonna run a row of stitching on this side of this seam, like right around here, about 1/16 of an inch in, all the way up and around the neckline. If you feel like you need to at this point, you can make some clips just so that it bends a little bit easier, but I wouldn't clip too close to that stitching line, okay? But that might make it easier at this point. Okay, with the understitching done now, let me see if I can figure out where to show you. So this is the wrong side, that is the right side. See my little row of stitching there? That is going to give me a perfect little edge. It's going to fold lovely, it's going to hold itself lovely. But actually before I press it, I'm going to come in here with my pinking shears and trim off, probably about 1/4 inch of that seam allowance. I'm going to trim it off all the way around the neckline up there. So over here at the ironing board, when I turn my facing under, I'm going to try to make sure that I don't mess up my pleats down here. And the stitching line and everything should be curling underneath towards the wrong side, so that after I press it like this, you shouldn't see any stitching line or anything from the right side. It should just be a nice edge, but the understitching pulls all of this under, so you can kind of see there's a little bit of the front piece peeking around. That's what the understitching is doing, is pulling it all over so that you don't see all of that. So let me go ahead and finish pressing this all the way up and around the neckline and pinning it in place so that it's laying nice and flat. At this point, if you're trying to get it to lay nicely up here around the neckline and it just feels like you're getting weird angles or it's binding up, go ahead and put some more clips in there, and that'll let it flex enough that you can get a nice smooth curve right here, okay? So, yay, that looks a lot better. I am going to be attaching this facing to the bodice so it won't be flipping everywhere, because nobody likes that. But for right now, I'm just kind of pinning it in place. Now up here at this edge here, I'm just folding the edge of the facing under and folding it over here, okay? So that this is what it looks like, and I want the folded edge to be at the bottom, probably about 1/4 inch away from the coils, you know, that way it won't interfere with the zipping up process here. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. One more little press here. And that is good. Okay. All right, so at this point, the instructions are going to want you to base it here, that facing, okay, up here at the shoulder seams, and back here to stitch this down in the back. I'm going to actually stitch the entire thing down with a needle and thread. I can do it fairly invisibly from the right side. It doesn't take that much longer because this is a long stretch here, and I just hate facings that want to do that, you know. Ill-behaved facings are not my friend. So I'm just going to start up here at the fold and make my big old basting stitches. I can pull this pin out now. And once I get down towards the bottom edge of this facing, I will scoot in to the other side here. And I have it pinned, you know, every so often all the way around. I wanted to point one thing out before I forget. On this side, this right front side that has all of these little pleats, it's important that you don't get your pleats stitched down, especially this little part right here wants to be. So I'm kind of holding it open with my fingers inside of that pleat down here so that as I'm stitching it, my pleat can still, you know, open and shut like it's supposed to. Okay, so here's a quick look at what she's looking like right now. So this side is obviously shorter, okay, and there's going to be a side front piece that's going to get sewed on right here. This side overlaps it like this. Sorry about that. And then these two are going to get stitched together before you sew the side front on. So here is my back. You can see there's where the zipper is. There's a little opening down here. It's coming together. I think it's kind of cute. I do like these pleats. I'm gonna leave the basting in. Well, I pulled this one out while I was stitching down the facing, you know, just because I had to get in there. But the rest of them I'm leaving basted until the final step. So anyhow, hope you like it. We will be back tomorrow, and we might even finish it tomorrow. We'll see how my day goes. Come back. It's actually been a couple days. I had to do some other work around the farm yesterday, and it got really hot and sweaty, and I just didn't feel like coming up here and doing all of this after being hot and sweaty. It was a time to relax after that. So cleaned up, back up here. And right now we're going to get started working on the side front piece and get that whole multi-layered front all assembled together. Okay, so I've got my side front piece here, and the first thing I need to do is serge around the edges after I make my marks. And because I have it with the right sides on the outside, I'm going to need to flip it, but I will punch out these circles, clip this notch, and that's going to be important for shaping that princess seam area. Up here, there's another notch, which is also important for princess seams. You know, just in general, notches all over the place. There's another one way down here, and I think that that has to do with matching up the lower edge of the under layer. So all that's important, but first I'm going to go ahead and serge. I'm not going to serge the very bottom because once again that is hem, but I'm going to go all the way around on both pieces, get them marked, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm just marking my little dots here, and up on this curve, you know, I clip my notches and then I serge. So sometimes they're a little bit hard to see, you know, unless I really know where to look, but since I'm right here anyway, even though I have it clipped, I'm going to go ahead and make a little mark, you know, just a little line at the edge where those notches are so it's easier for me to see. And I think I just ran out of ink. Nope, there it is. And once again, circling my dots because, yeah, they just want to disappear here. And I've had people suggest use tailor tacks, and, you know, I could. I've spent, I feel like, many lifetimes making tailor tacks in my past, but it's just the thought of stopping everything to thread a needle and everything, just sometimes it interrupts my flow, and for me it's just easier to keep a tissue handy to grab in reference, you know. So everyone has their own preferences and their own favorite way of working. For me, it's just this first, then chalk, and chalk pencil, but if I can't mark it like that really quickly, I just keep my tissue paper handy until I'm done with that piece as I'm putting it together. And that seems to work for me. You do you, as the saying goes. So let me go ahead and get my dress back down here. We're gonna pin these up. Okay, so the one they want you to do first is the piece that has all of the little pleats worked into it. So I've got that piece up here. Move my stuff out of the way. And I'm going to grab the side front piece that will fit here. Oops, I think that is the wrong side. So let me get the other one. Okay, this is the right one. So what I'm going to do is start pinning all over the place, actually. I'm going to start up here at the top. There's going to be a dot, a notch, a dot, a notch, and a dot. So I'm just going to match those locations up first, and then we'll come back and ease in between them. Okay, so I want to show you working in this curve here. I have a whole lot of stuff going on right here. Now, this is fairly moldable. It's a lightweight cotton. I can mold it pretty easily. If you're working with a thicker fabric that does not want to mold, you might want to put some clips over here, just up to your stay stitch line, you know, to make it flex better, but I'm good. So what I'm just going to do is find that halfway point, folding it in half here, and taking the halfway point of both pieces here, matching them up. Okay, and it's not going to lay perfectly flat at the very edges. The important thing is that at that 5/8 inch in point where the stitches are actually going to go, that's going to be flat, all right? And you can see it is, so that's a good thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep doing that until I feel like at that 5/8 inch point right here, it's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go back to my machine and stitch this whole distance here at 5/8 inch. You know what? Just to make it so that it is easier as I'm over there, I am going to put a couple clips up here, because what that is going to do is let this curved part here just flex just a little bit. And my clips are only maybe 1/8 inch deep, not very much, but it'll allow it to flex just enough that I can put this on the bed and sew it nice and flat. Okay, so I've got that sewn on, and I am not pressing it yet because we're going to sew another layer to it. So I'm just going to lay it down here like this, okay, so that, get all this out of the way here, so that my side is on the bottom here, okay. Now it wants me to get the opposite piece, which is the under layer here, and match it up. If I match this edge here, this fold edge, with the dot on the side just below it, then I'm going to have a notch right here, which is going to match up with the layers, and you know, I think that this is actually correct. So that bottom dot, I'm still not too sure what that is. I'm just going to pin this really quickly and put it upright just to make sure everything looks like it is laying correctly before I stitch it. But once I'm sure that I'm in the right place here, looking at the top, it looks like it is crossing at an appropriate place. I want to get the side piece out there, okay? So that looks like it's crossing at the right place. If I open this up, these are, you know, at the right place. So I feel good about this position. I need to go ahead and stitch this right here at 5/8 inch also, okay? So I'm going to be sandwiching all three of these layers together. So on the back side, it's the side front. In the middle, it's that pleated one, but the pleats are actually on the other side, but it's that pleated layer, and then this one on the top. Alrighty, so I got that sewed. So I just want to open this whole thing up and see what it looks like on the right side to make sure it's making sense. So, yeah, I like that. So up here is my armhole. This is the side seam here. This you can't really see, but there's the seams I just did. And over here, it looks like things are lining up properly over there. So that is good. It wants you to press this entire seam allowance towards the side seam. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quickly, and then we'll put the opposite side on. Okay, so I've got that pressed and out to the side there. Now it wants you to take, you know, here's my under layer here. I've got a dot here, which I should be matching up to about the bottom edge of this. And on the back here, I have a dot right here, which you can not see, I'm sure, because I can barely see it. And that should line up with the top edge here. So I'm just going to set that where that dot is, smooth everything down. Make sure it looks like it makes sense up here. And I think it does. The center back is still in line with where it crosses, so all looks good there. I could base this together and then add the side front to it, but this fabric is so thin and it's a nicely behaving woven that I think I'm just going to put a few pins here to hold it together and then get my side front piece, put it on top here, match up the appropriate circle, notch, and all of that, and get it all matched up, and then sew this seam here at 5/8 inch also. I just figured out that lower dot. It's for this version that has the little flappiness on it. That's a mark for sewing that little flappiness onto it, which I am not doing, but it's good to know what it is. So I'm just going to ignore that bottom dot for right now. I'm almost done getting this pinned on, you know, easing it the same way I did before, clipping up to, not up to, but clipping the side that has the stay stitching, you know, about 1/8 inch, just so this will flex, you know. Sewing it and pressing this seam allowance towards the side seam when I'm all done. Right, so I've got this side sewn now and pressed, you know, the seam allowance towards the outside edge. Fold it in right. And so since I don't need these basting stitches anymore, I'm just going to go ahead and clip them and bring them out. It's hard to do this with my scissors upside down here. My goodness. So anyway, just bringing them out, but since, you know, I pressed them a little bit before, hopefully that they will retain their crispness down there. And then once I get this done, we're just going to match up the front and back at the side seams. You know, put my back over it and stitch the side seam at 5/8 inch, and I believe we'll press those seam allowances open like standard. I don't really see any reason why not at this point. So that's going to be my next step. So next time you see this, I'm actually going to pop it onto my dress form so we can see what it's looking like at this stage. Okay, so here it is, and it is fitting my dress form like a basic sheath dress should. You know, it's fairly form-fitting. I do have some ease, you know, built in, but not enough to distort the shape, basically. Up here at the top where it crosses, it seems to be crossing at a reasonable height. I will know more when I actually put it onto my body, but at this point, it looks like a reasonable height. In the back, you can see I have my invisible zipper that comes all the way down and a tiny little slit at the bottom. And by the time I put a hem that's a couple inches deep, my slit's only going to be maybe about 5 or 6 inches, so that's good. So yeah, I think it's interesting. It's very bright. I need bright and vibrant, you know. It suits me. I was concerned with if it was going to be pooching out at the sides where I went from a size 20 down to a size 16 at the waist. And it looks like it's fairly smooth, so that's a good thing. So anyhow, I believe we are about to start with the sleeves. And remember, it's a 2-layer sleeve. There's a lining that's smaller than the outside, so that's going to be an interesting twist. But yeah, I like her. Okay, so looking at my sleeve piece here, there's looks like 4 darts at the very top and gathers at the bottom of the main piece. And then there's gathers at the top of the lining piece. I'm just going to work on my outside piece first. There's going to be a lot of things to mark on here, and these darts, I have to mark them on the right side of my fabric. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and go over to my serger, serge all the way around both of these pieces. It's a large sleeve piece, as you can see. And then when I get that done, I'll come back and I'm going to mark these pleats on my right side, same way I usually do, punch the holes. I will be using my chalk since it's on the right side. Have them serged. Now you need to make sure you keep track of which side is the front and which side is the back. And the side that has 2 notches is the back. The side with 1 notch is the front. So I'm just going to get my pen And on the wrong side of the back corner, just going to write a big letter B and circle it so I can know that that is my back. Now I have serged around these. I do need to mark all of my pleats. I keep calling them darts, but I need to mark my pleats on the front. So just like always, I'm going to punch out all of these circles, draw the circles on, and then come back on the outside and connect them with my chalk. And I think that they'll show up pretty well that way. Okay, so I have it marked with my little white pencil, but redrawing the lines with a chalk will definitely help. There's also a circle up here in the very top center. And so I have that marked here, but I'm going to go ahead and clip just a little divot up there so it'll be easier for me to see where my top center is. Okay, and to fold the pleats, they want to fold out, okay, so that it'll look more like a waterfall coming down both sides. So that means bringing this is my center point, bringing this side here over and matching it up with the second side and making sure I get this edge over here nice and flat. These pleats are thick enough that they're going to kind of overlap on the back side, but that's okay for right now. So I'm just going to put 2 pins here and then go to the next one. Bring the inside line to the lower line. Line up the outside edge so that's nice and flat and put a pin here. Okay, doing the same on the other side, just the opposite direction. Bringing the inside line here over. Once I get these all folded up into place and pinned in place, going over to my machine, I'm just going to put a row of stitching straight across here. This fabric's so busy, I'm even going to do it at 5/8 of an inch just to hold it. You know, if it was a fabric that would be a lot more visible, I would probably put it at about 1/2 inch. But that way, all of these little pleats will be held in place and not have all of these pins in my way, because we're going to be doing a lot of things up here. So it's just a nice little sleeve cap up here at the top. So what I need to do now is put some gathering stitches along the bottom, and they want you to put them between 2 dots on the sides. Those dots look like they are set, well, we can measure here. They're about 1.25 inches in from each side. So just because, you know, things are finicky right now, I'm just going to put a little mark 1.25 inches in that side and also over here, and run 2 rows of gathering stitches. And let's see here. Yeah, just run 2 rows of gathering stitches, one at about 1/2 inch seam allowance, one at about 1/4 inch seam allowance, because this is a fairly long piece to gather in. Okay, so at this point, the instructions want you to sew the side of the sleeve together. And I'm going to deviate from that because we're going to be gathering this part here to the bottom of the lining piece. And so I'm going to be putting the lining together with the main part while they're still open flat, and then sewing the side seam on both of them. I think that's going to be better for me. So what that means is I'm just going to put these 2 pieces aside for a moment and get my lining piece out. And I need to make sure that, well, here's the thing. Yeah, I was thinking, well, do I need to serge it? Because it is going to be tucked in. But up here, this part will not be tucked in. That's going to be visible. Plus, there's going to be gathers going on. So I'm going to go ahead and, first of all, before I take it off my paper here, I'm going to put a letter B on the back side corner of both of my lining pieces here, because we don't want to lose track of that. Again, that's the one with the 2 notches. Okay, so now that that is marked, I'm going to go ahead and serge all the way around both of these pieces, before I start marking everything up. Alrighty, so I have my lining pieces serged around and I have marked the 3 dots up there at the top. Okay, so what I need to do is run 2 rows of gathering stitches between the 2 outside dots on both of these. I actually decided to only put 1 row of gathering thread stitches. These are very lightweight. I think 1 will be fine for that small amount. So what I need to do now is sew together a lining piece with one of my outside pieces. So I'm going to find one. I got my B over here, so I know that is the back. Raise you up a bit. Okay, so if this is the back of a piece, I want a lining piece with the back B on this side also. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and match up the outsides over here. Come on, slippery fabric here. I'm going to match up the outside corners and the centers of these, and then pull my gathering threads to cinch in this fabric to match this one. When I sewed it, I was looking at the wrong side here when I was putting these gathering threads in, so that means that this side, my right side, is my bobbin threads, and it's a lot easier to pull your bobbin threads than your needle threads when you're gathering, especially something this long. So that's what I will be doing, is pulling my bobbin threads. See, I can make this match up this way, and I will be right back. Once I have my threads cinched in enough that you know it'll kind of lay flat, I'm just tying them off because there's something about long gathering threads that can be annoying. So just getting those cinched in and clipped. Alrighty, so I can just spread them out enough that it's going to fill in the space. And you can see these are quite tight gathers. So yeah, the sleeves are definitely going to have a balloon kind of appearance to it. But you know, that's part of the design, so that's okay. Once I have this all pinned on here, then I'm going to come back and sew straight across here at 5/8 of an inch. My first one stitched, and it's looking pretty fun here. When you're stitching it, you might want to look at this side, you know, the side with all the gathers as you sew. That way you can keep them organized as you go. But I wanted to show you when you open it up, lots of poofiness is going to be involved here. There is going to be understitching, but I need to finish this sleeve first before we go on to that part. Okay, so now I need to understitch this. So I'm going to open it up here, and I'm understitching it to the lining side. So that means that the seam allowances are underneath the lining, both of them, okay? And I'm going to run a row of straight stitching on the lining side, you know, about a 1/16 of an inch or so in over here, all the way to the other side on both of my sleeve pieces. So I've got my understitching done there, which is going to help emphasize the poof. So what I'm going to do now is fold this in half and do that big long side seam. So I'm going to make sure that these seam allowances stay towards the lining, but pin it together, making sure this seam here lines up perfectly, and sew this at 5/8 of an inch all the way across, and then come back and press this seam allowance open. So to press the seam allowances here open, I just have a sleeve roll, my homemade one, you know, they're fabulous little things. And so I can slide that into my sleeve and press this, and that way I don't need to worry about causing creases on the other side or anything like that. So before I ironed it though, I did, with a chalk that you probably still can't see, put a big X, because I was thinking as soon as I ironed this, my big letter B that I drew might disappear, and no, it did not. I kept it over enough to the side, but I wanted to make sure that I had a backup mark in case that wanted to disappear. So at this point, I need to double these up. on, shake this out. It's kind of an awkward shape because it's making this big balloon. This reminds me of like a sleeve on a prom dress I made in the 80s. You know, 80s had fabulous big taffeta prom dresses with massive sleeves. I think it was a fuchsia pink one. Anyway, it reminds me a lot of that. So you can see here is the little lining opening, and then you have poof, all of this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead on around here and match up my side seams and my center top. And then there's going to be some easing and gathering these threads and everything to make this fit together. All right, so I've got one of my sleeves attached here, and what it looks like is there's the 3 dots on the lining. So first you match up the center dot with the center up here, okay? The outside dot is going to match up with the beginning at this point here of each pleat, okay? So if you match that up, the sides will match up very evenly here, and then just pull the gathers so you have it in here is all gathered up. So again, a lot of fullness in there. What I need to do is sandwich these together before I try to put it into my dress. So it says to baste it. I'm actually going to go to my sewing machine and stitch it all the way around at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just to hold it together. Or actually, I'll probably go down to about, you know, close to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think that'll be a lot better. But just to stitch it around here so I can pull out all of these pins and make sure it stays nice and secure, okay? Okay, I ended up stitching this at 5/8 of an inch with just a basting stitch so that if I needed to, I can pick it out. But that seemed like the best to me just because of all of this stuff going on, you know? And you can see I did catch a little piece there, but I'm not going to worry about that. It's on the inside and the lining, you know. Everything else looks really good. So I'm going to take my balloony sleeve here and make sure that I have the right sleeve for the right side. So I have it unzipped here, you can see. So this is my back and this is my front. So I'm getting a sleeve where the back side matches up over here. And just start pinning it in. It's already gathered and shaped, so my hope is that we can just pin it straight in and don't have to make any more adjustments. So I'm just going to start down here at the bottom and then match up the top up here, centering my center pleat with my shoulder seam. I can see where that center point is to line it up. You can see there's a lot of thickness going on here. But let me go ahead and pin it. Yeah, when I stretch this out, it does look like everything's gonna pretty well match up. Where I have some dots, I have some notches, all of that is good. So let me get it pinned on. Once I have it pinned, I'm going to stitch all the way around at 5/8 of an inch and then come in about another 1/8 of an inch from there and do a second row. So my first one's at 5/8, my second's going to be at about 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. So I'll have 2 rows of stitching here. So now that I have my 2 rows of stitching in, I need to trim it. I'm going to trim most of it with my pinking shears, and I'm getting, you know, within 1/8 of an inch of my second row of stitching. And the idea is that second row of stitching is going to keep things from wanting to come apart. Now look at there. I almost trimmed this. I have a little bit of a pucker, so I'm actually going to fix that pucker before I trim all of this. The pattern of my fabric is honestly so busy, it's probably not even visible from the outside, but it would bother me. So I'm just going to come back and fix that right there. I've already trimmed the other side. Oh, where are you, other side? Here you are. Okay, and what that does is it's going to make it a lot more comfortable to wear, but up here at the top where all of this bulk is going on, it's a whole lot lighter now, so I think that's good. Good call on their part. Almost forgot my hem. Can you believe that? I think I've done that more than once. Okay, so they want you to turn up the bottom 1 1/4 inches, and then just just make a little 1¼ inch hem. They say finish raw edge. Okay. So what they want you to do is turn it up 1¼ inch, but they say finish raw edge after you turn it up, which makes no sense to me. I'm going to go ahead and just serge all the way across the bottom here and then turn it up my 1¼ inch, you know, like so. This is my little slit here in the back. Alrighty, I got it hemmed up really quickly on the machine. Basically, I serged it, folded it up a little more than 1¼ inch, probably closer to 1 3/8, but you know, who's counting? Folded it up, and then up here at the slit, I just turned the edges in like they have on the instructions and stitched it up and down that way. So on the outside of it, if you really squint your eyes and look, yeah, you'll see the stitching, but honestly, this print is so busy, who's going to notice? And if they do, so what? So what? So I'm going to go ahead and pop it on the dress form. So here you go. She is made up. She's cute, fun colors, fits comfortably. You know, I think that doing the whole going from size 20 down here at my hips to 16 here to 18 here, I think you can see how you can work those multi-sized patterns and everything and use them so it fits you, because you know there's not very many of us who have a standard size body, and that's one of the tough things with the sheath dress or this kind of style in particular is they really kind of have to be custom made unless you're perfect, you know, according to the standard sizes today, which I am not. So using those, you know, blending and everything, try it out. You never know, it might work. I like this dress. I like the sleeves. The lining on the sleeves is narrower than the outside fabric, but even so, you know, it's still comfortable with my big sausage arms as is without any alterations in the pattern. So that was good. And I got bees around me because they think I'm so delectable in my flowered dress here. But you know, this is all cotton. It's wash and wear. It's so warm and humid out here, I can't really tell you. There's a bee buzzing around the camera, so if you see it go past the lens, that's a bumblebee or a honeybee. So anyhow, it's not serious. It's got 1980s sleeves. It's got crazy colors, but it's a fun dress. So I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
My bucolic life, 3 healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.